Okay, so PPI and inflation continue to signal that downtrend like we kind of thought going into yesterday. Now, tomorrow is CPI, so don't get too crazy. But we look at the stock market, the S&P 500, obviously we're liking what's happening. And in my opinion, all we needed to get out of this hole and to really start pushing back into what I believe all-time highs once again is getting some sort of good information, good news, good data. And again, we're pushing back towards that thesis of the market is moving how we want it to. Unemployment may be spiking, but as you can see, inflation is dropping rapidly when we look at the data today. And then when we look at CPI tomorrow, if it confirms this, I think the Fed is pushed to a very good position of let's start cutting those rates and see what's happening. Now, this is going to be the crazy part. Over the next month, if you start to see inflation continue on that track despite cutting rates, it'll be almost a euphoric move, in my opinion, which is crazy going into September and October, which traditionally aren't really great months, especially with an election coming up. But then that puts you into the end of the year, which puts you in an even weirder position of you might have a good September and October and then set up for a great close, which typically we get after that presidential election. So, you're set up for a really interesting 6 months, and that's what we're talking about here today. But first, we got to go over the information, what's happening on the charts. Let's get to that. So really quickly, sorry, we're going to not do any cuts in this video. Got to be out of here pretty soon. Okay. So this will be the last video that we're making here at the in-laws, by the way. But as you can see here, you're pushing back into our 100 SMA. We kind of talked about this level yesterday. It's been more key specifically on ES. And like we discussed yesterday is after you break above that 100, guess what? Breakout potential. And that took place almost immediately. And what you're doing right now is you're coming back into some previous lows. So you're at resistance right now, 54.32. You might find a little bit of turbulence here though, but I still think buyers are positioned very well. You go into the S&P SPY, pushing up again. You mount that level to 100. You broke above your next level, 537, pushing into previous lows, 540. I think you're working your way back up, okay? We go to Qs, right? You're at your resistance right now, very similar to how SPY was at 537. You're breaking that. Above that, you're pushing into 465 or 459, 460, sorry, to 465. You're pushing up very well. But again, the biggest thing I'm seeing, and people ask me today on Twitter, and I recommend, guys, if you have questions, ask questions on Twitter, right? But they asked, why are mid caps falling while the rest of the market? It's called a rotation, first of all. But the biggest thing is mid caps aren't really falling, guys. Like I said yesterday, right? The mid caps that I like are all the ones with great earnings, right? Upstart, great for instance. Robinhood, another good for instance, right? These are names that I've been calling out. I mentioned Robinhood and actually ended up buying quite a bit more in Discord, right? And Robinhood pushing back into highs locally, almost $19, probably going to push into $20 very soon, right? So again, it's not that all mid caps are falling or this or that. It's that the good ones are moving, right? So Upstart, another good one, right? Pushing back up, pushing back almost into 38, probably gonna run towards $40, right? These have good earnings. That's the story here, right? And so that's what you're really looking for here. Now, IWM as a whole, I get it. I'm not getting all the love that it was getting before. I think it will eventually start moving and bouncing, but you need to go back above 210. But until that point, that's what I'm looking at there. Okay, but I do think right now, like I said in yesterday's video, the opportunity is with tech. That is what I'm seeing, and that's the story that I'm interpreting here from the market, right? So if I look at the market here and I look at names like, for instance, Microsoft, right? Microsoft has had a monster year, but you're on the downturn down here. I mean, you're down 410. Do you think the story's really changed with Microsoft? I don't. Your all-time highs back here just in July. We're at 470. So again, I think you're getting crazy value. If we look at the market as a whole, Amazon below the 200 SMA, you get back above the 200 SMA. I think you wait for 170, but above that, it's clear skies, right? So these are the giant signals that are sitting in front of us, in my opinion, right now. And I think you have to be crazy to be ignoring these signals that are out there right now, right? AMD, another good one. It gets back above 141. Talked about this yesterday, probably pushing into that today. You hit it today. Above 141, crazy upside, back to 155. So broad markets, what you're looking for. NVIDIA, the names go on and on and on. NVIDIA pushing back into 115, 116. We talked all about this. Meta yesterday, we said above 514, probably pushing into 531. Happening again. So again, the story is in front of you. You can choose how you want to, look at it. You can be biased, whatever you want to do. Do whatever you got to do, guys. Now, quickly going over the PPI data, I'm just pulling up my Twitter. I posted this earlier. Monster beats, or monster, I guess, lower than expected misses. I don't know what you would consider this, right? Year over year, down. Everything's down. Perfect. Core PPI specifically 2.7, 2.4. Amazing. That's just my opinion, okay? So again, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm watching. And this is what you want to see as the Fed. And again, you can be like, and I'm not calling it one out. If you want to comment on my Twitter, I like to respond. I've been a little bit slower lately just because of the whole move in the house and pregnancy, right? But again, if you want to look at things from a negative standpoint, you can, right? How you trade is how you trade. But it's important that you understand that when you're biased in a direction, that's when you're going to get usually cooked or toasted, right? And I'm just looking at the market from my lens of how I view it from an unbiased standpoint at all points in time. And, when I look at you're getting what the Fed wants, and the only bearish catalyst over the past 2 years has been what the Fed has done as far as raising rates, not lowering rates, things along those lines. The market as a whole has been very bullish. So when I see the Fed getting what they want, it makes me happy. So back into NQ, what we're looking at here. Ultimately, I think NQ is in a great position. I don't really even have levels that I'm really charting at this point. I would love to get us back above 19K. Flat, that's it. But really, you're looking for tomorrow morning CPI data. CPI comes out good, you're pushing up once again, you're out of the hole. And it looks like one of the best bear traps that we've ever seen. If you even want to really consider that based on where you bounced, okay, guys, worth mentioning, right? I also want to highlight right now that, again, if you guys are interested in our indicators, we're actually working with Lux Algo to make it even cheaper, but the link is down below, just to let you guys know. But the potential double bottom down here, you break above, I mean, really imagine if we break back above 21K, the double bottom move. I want to let that be very clear. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but pretty insane when you really think about it. And the fact, and if you start really mounting this level, as you can see here, back above 18.8, 18.9, guys, I mean, like, what are we talking about? This is explosive. This is an explosive potential move. And I think CPI is the icing on the cake when we look at tomorrow. So again, what I'm looking at, I don't want to make today's video too long, too complicated, but that's what I'm watching on the day. Really quick, guys, going back into my perspective when I'm looking at the market. I think this has been one of the best opportunities. I think I've been really clear with saying that as well. The only bad things that could happen right now is really with Iran and Israel. That's the worst case scenario right now. But when I look at broad markets, I'm happy. I don't know what else to say. I look at what's happening as far as inflation. It's good. People want to talk about unemployment spiking is bad. It was expected. We look at mortgage rates consistently dropping, and when CPI comes out, and if it comes out good, mortgage rates will drop further. There's a high possibility that FHA 30-year mortgages can get closer to 5% in a matter of, a month or two, which we weren't conceptualizing. We're also seeing on PPI and hopefully with CPI, with what's happening with mortgage rates, hopefully are impacting rent prices, dropping those rent prices finally. And if rent prices and rent inflation can ease in the summer, it will really ease going into the winter, because we all know rent prices and mortgage prices in general, or home prices, elevate in the summer months, right? Post taxes. And then in the holiday months, they usually drop because you're going into holiday season, spending increases, okay? And so for the people wondering out there, well, PPI is dropping and I think, consumers are spending less. Well, spoiler alert, we're coming into that area of the end of the year where typically spending increases. So the fact that the market we're able to still put up these earnings, and we have to understand that the biggest companies aren't really dictated by consumers, except maybe Amazon, maybe Apple, which are still putting up great numbers right now, which is incredible. You're coming back into their good months. So those are things to be thinking about. And we look at the other broad markets like Microsoft, which are kind of getting hit, NVIDIA getting hit, AMD getting hit, AVGO, semiconductors as a whole. Guys, I look at those past earnings, AMD, AVGO, even ARM, and semiconductors look good. I look at Microsoft, earnings were good. You have the whole, CrowdStrike, hack, whatever, but I still think the market's in a good position. And I think the reason that you're dropping wasn't because of earnings. I don't think it was because of what was happening with our inflation report. I think it was outside institutions. I think we were getting a good pullback, but I think what happened with the Bank of Japan really was the kicker, right? The knife in the heart, if you will. So again, I look at the market. I'm happy. I'm excited. And I think there's big opportunity broad-based in the markets. And I didn't get to go over a lot of the same stocks, but if you guys want to look at the stocks I mentioned yesterday, my opinion's still there. Apple hitting above 220, very bullish. NVIDIA pushing back into 115. Cheaper names you can look at: Upstart, Robinhood. I like Kava. even broad based upon that, I think Zillow is a really interesting name. We look at what's happening with mortgages. I think the home market's going to catch some fire going into the end of the year. I think Home Depot is interesting. That's a little bit more expensive. But again, broad based markets, take your pick of the litter. Look at strong names, though, specifically. That's the biggest thing I want to tell you guys. When you're looking at the market from this lens, look at it from let's go long on the stronger names that have the good story. Maybe they're pulled back, but they still have the story there. And I think one of the biggest names that I think I've been bearish on lately, that I'm flipping the narrative, is AMD. I think AMD might be the big winner over the next few weeks and months. Call me crazy. Number one bitch, you can't replace me. Think about that.